Hi. I want to talk for a minute about the district attorney here in Portland, Oregon. His name is Rod Underhill, and I had complained about him back in 2013. He has an assistant deputy, assistant attorney, district attorney Kirsten Snowden, who was the one that prosecuted me back in 2013. I was unjustly arrested by Detective Tony Harris. They were contacted. The Portland Police Bureau was contacted by the New Haven FBI office, and they were told to arrest me. And Detective Harris came out with two other detectives, a male and a female. The female's name was Pam. And I don't know what the other person, the male, he was fat. I remember that. I didn't used to be fat. I got fat because they put me on drugs in federal court for 3 years. But Portland police have a long history of being very abusive to people with mental illness. I didn't have a mental illness. I don't have a mental illness. But there's a lot of people with mental illnesses that keep telling me that I'm mentally ill, and I'm not them. I'm my own person, and I don't want anybody pushing any of their garbage off onto me. And that's what these people do, is they try and push their garbage off onto you or to me. And Portland is notorious for doing this. I mean, all of the people in leadership, supposed leadership positions do this. It's horrible. And then when you try to contact them, they don't answer the phone, they don't call you back, or they tell you to stop contacting them. And then the next step is they'll utilize the police and try to intimidate you, and the police are stupid enough to take the orders that these people give out. I think Danielle Outlaw better wise up, because, I mean, look, the FBI blew up the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building using micronuclear bombs. They killed 168 innocent people along with the ATF. Right, this was on April 19th, 1995. It was blamed on two men, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols. But Brigadier General Benton K. Parton, who prepared a bomb damage analysis that's available online if you you search for it, and he explained that there is no way that the truck bomb that Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols had could have caused there's no way that blast wave could have caused the amount of damage that was done to the structure of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. And I was discussing this with a friend of mine, Alfred Weber, who's an attorney. He wrote a book titled Exopolitics, and he is working. He's given many talks with Andrew Basiago, who we know gets elected president because of the time travel technology that he and his father had access to in Project Pegasus. So, and then I was accused of calling in bomb threats for the Multnomah County Jail and the probation office, and that was unfounded, really. I mean, I'm innocent. I'm totally innocent. Like, I want to get these charges removed from my record, and that's one of the reasons why I contacted Senator Merkley's office to have casework done. And that casework was assigned to an attorney named Joel Corcoran. And Joel, I was told by several people that he has a long history of hanging around cemeteries. In fact, he's the chairman of a cemetery organization here in Portland. And because I had left a voice message there asking him for help because he wasn't replying back to me when I contacted Senator Merkley's Portland office. Joel ignored me for like two months. And then his boss, Scott McGuire, who's a state operations director, yelled at me one time on the phone and told me that I was being very difficult to work with. And I couldn't understand what the hell he was talking about because no one ever calls me. And they had this casework for over 2 months. And I think I had called like 3 times. And then I wrote a letter to Joel Corcoran's home asking him for help. And then called this cemetery organization that he's a member of and left a voice message there asking for help. And he filed stalking protective orders, and I'm supposed to go into court on January 15th. Well, I got a call earlier today, and they told me that if Mike Reese, the sheriff, Multnomah County Sheriff, sends any deputies out to my apartment, they're going to be taken out. That's what they told me on the phone. So this is a really corrupt system that they have here in Portland. I wrote a letter, an email to this woman named Nordyke. She works at the at the state capitol where the governor is, Kate Brown. And so this Nordyke woman, Vanessa, her name's Vanessa. And so I told her, the problems I'm having with the Oregon State Bar, because I keep getting these bad attorney referrals. Nobody wants to work on my case. And then I have this frivolous complaint with Joel Corcoran. And this guy's really creepy. I had spoken with him over a year ago on the phone, and he's a liar. He told me that he knew a person who had lost a leg in the Boston bombing. And I know from my friend Robert David Steele, who worked for the Central Intelligence Agency for 20 years as a spy, that the Boston bombing was fake. Nobody died. And so I had a similar problem a couple of weeks ago with Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban is a multi-billionaire. He's the owner of the Dallas Mavericks basketball team. And I had sent him an email telling him that no one was killed in the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting of October 27th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in an area called the Squirrel Hill neighborhood. And he emailed me back, and he was using foul language. He told me to crawl back under the fucking rock I came from, that he knew someone who knew people that were killed, and just all these lies. So I reported Mark to the Texas Rangers Law Enforcement Agency, the FBI, and the Dallas Police Bureau. And I told them what Mark was doing, that Mark's going around saying he knows people that were killed. And I told the police and the FBI and the Texas Rangers law enforcement people that I had given this information to Second Circuit Court Judge, Chief Judge Robert Katzman in Manhattan, and also Ninth Circuit Court Judge, Chief Judge Sidney Thomas in San Francisco, and Magistrate Michael Newman on the 10th Circuit in Ohio, and that I had also written a letter to every member of the Supreme Court. I wrote them each a letter explaining to them that the synagogue shooting was fake, and that the President Trump is being blackmailed because he knows no one was killed, and he won't mention it in public for some reason. And so there's a lot of corruption in Portland. This guy that's got this complaint, this frivolous complaint, works for Senator Merkley. And Senator Merkley's office is a total mess. I received a letter. First I had his Portland staff that was yelling at me. This man, Scott McGuire, who's a state operations director, He had the police come out to my residence on October 30th, and that's when they violated my Fourth Amendment rights. This Officer Combs and Officer Hanson, they said it was just a welfare check, but Officer Combs was getting all like, I thought he was going to assault me. He kept asking to search my apartment. He wanted to look for an arsenal, he said. And I kept telling him, well, I have no history of doing any of these things that you're talking about. And in fact, if you look at my FBI file, which I uploaded to the internet, they have this section where they talk about threat mechanisms, because it has a whole list of different places that I had called, because I make a lot of phone calls. I've been doing that for years. And all these people that I was calling, or writing letters to, were complaining, like the Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. At the time, the CEO was a man named Jeff Rakes, and I had contacted him, his foundation, and left a message with information about that they could utilize for the Gates Foundation. And then he contacted the FBI, and all this information is, and then like Warren Buffett, the chairman of the Berkshire Hathaway, they were contacting the FBI and complaining about me. It's all in my FBI file, which I uploaded to the internet a couple months ago. I had it on my blog, but Google took my blog away. And I had contacted the CEO of Alphabet, the president of Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google, and the CEO of Google, which is a man named Sundar Pichai, I think it is. And they won't reply back to me. They won't give me my blog back. They won't give me my blog content back. And I had a lot of information in there. One of the things I had in my blog was I had a letter that it was everything that I wrote to every member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, where I gave a copy to every member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I wrote to them and I explained to them that the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting was fake, which was supposed to have occurred on December 14th of 2012, which is December 14th is James Comey's birthday. He's the former FBI director. And then the President Obama appeared in Newtown and had his photograph taken. And you know the Secret Service knows about this because it's their job to make sure the president is safe. So the Secret Service most definitely knows that no one was killed in Newtown, but nobody will speak up because nobody wants to lose a paycheck. There's some guy named Dan Bongo or something like that. He's a former Secret Service agent, and he has a radio show. And I emailed him thinking that maybe he would do something, and he just never replied back to me. So he's afraid of losing his pension, probably, if he speaks up about it. He's a coward. And then, and also in the letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee, I explained that the United States government official story of Flight 93 crashing in Shanksville, Pennsylvania is false. My friend Sergeant Clifford Stone was in Shanksville after 9/11. He told me he saw no evidence of any airplane crash. And Clifford had a job in the military where he would go out and to UFO crashes and see if there were any beings that were alive. And then his job was he was called an interface. He would communicate with any of the entities that were alive, and they would communicate telepathically. I met Clifford back in 2010. Actually, I started talking to him in 2009, and then we kept communicating over the phone for the course of a year. And then he told me, if you're ever in town, come by the house. I ended up in 2010 going down to Roswell. So Clifford said there was no airplane crash in Shanksville. And then the mayor of Cleveland, Michael White, he held a press conference where he announced that Flight 93 landed in Cleveland, and that the passengers entered the NASA research aircraft hangar, and they were interviewed by FBI agents. And Robert Mueller was the director of the FBI. And Michael White's press conference was broadcasted on WCPO, which is a Cincinnati station located in the Mount Adams area of Cincinnati. And so I gave that information. Nobody killed at Newtown. Nobody killed in Flight 93 didn't crash. I gave that to the Senate Judiciary Committee members. I also included information about how federal judge Michael Mossman had me in prison for 30 days and injected with psychotropic drugs for 3 years after I gave the same information to him. Recently I got a letter back from the Ninth Circuit. I had a complaint against Michael Mossman with the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. It was heard by Chief Judge Sidney Thomas, and he dismissed it. So Mossman gets off with nothing. Meanwhile, I'm stuck with hospital bills, having to deal with the problem I have with my legs from all this weight gain. And I had to go to the hospital last year to have ultrasound done and x-rays of my heart and an ultrasound of my heart. I thought that I had blood clots at first, and so I couldn't understand why I was having all this fluid retention in my legs. So I have all these bills I have to pay. So, and then there's a lot of corruption with people, and there's no way I'm going into court with this guy Joel Corcoran. Somebody told me that he's been hanging around cemeteries since he was young. Like, he has some weird thing about hanging around cemeteries. He's probably a necrophiliac. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I don't know for certain that he is, but somebody tells me he just likes being around dead people. Well, I'm sorry I ever got involved with these people. If my federal attorney, Francesca Fischero, who works for the Federal Public Defenders, if she had adequately defended me, I wouldn't have these problems. But she didn't. And like I mentioned in a previous video, she told me one time that Chief Judge Michael Mossman was a Rhodes Scholar. And she lied to me, because he's not a Rhodes Scholar. He's a Mormon, and he went to Mormon school. I just posted recently on my Twitter account a picture of him where he gave a talk in October at Brigham Young at the I think it's the J. Rubin something School of Law. He gave a talk. His title of his talk was "How Not to Be Stupid." Man, I tell you, he imprisoned me for 30 days, had me injected with drugs for 3 years after I told him that, Flight 93 landed in Cleveland, and that the Sandy Hook shooting was fake. There's over $100 million has gone into the city of Newtown since it was reported in the media that the people were shot. But the school was closed since 2008. I've been talking about it. There's Robert David Steele talks about it. There's a man named Wolfgang Halbig who talks about it. There's a Professor James Tracy who lost his job with Florida Atlantic University because this guy Lenny Posner, who's running around saying that he lost his son Noah, and Lenny is a liar. He did an interview, I think it was with like New York Magazine, where he said he told them that the morning December 14th, 2012, he drove his 3 children, Sophia, Ariel, and Noah, to the Sandy Hook Elementary School. Well, the school was closed. It had been closed since 2008. Why did you decide to drive them to school that day? He didn't drive his kids to school. He's a liar. And James Tracy lost his job as a professor, a tenured professor. And then there's people that have been put in jail. There's a woman in Florida named Lucy, someone that got put in jail. A man named Reich, Jonathan Reich in New York, who got put in jail. I got put in jail. I spent 2 months in jail in Portland, Oregon, because the FBI, New Haven FBI, requested that the Portland police arrest me. Because they claimed I was mentally ill, because the people in Newtown, Connecticut were complaining to the Newtown, Connecticut police. It's horrible. And none of these people ever apologized. Like, the person that gave the order to have me arrested, the FBI, is a woman named, she goes by the name Shea now, like Shea Butter, or, Shea. And her name is Kimberly Shea. She's an former FBI agent, special agent, and she was the agent in charge of the New Haven office. And it was her that gave the order to contact the Portland police and have me arrested. Well, she's in charge of security for the New York region for a company called Brookfield Property Partners. And she works at 200 Vesey Street in Manhattan. It's where the World Trade Center used to be. It's where the Freedom Tower is. I did a Google search and I found, and they showed me, the street. I could see the exterior of the buildings. And, I've called, and I no apology from her at all. No email response. I contacted James Waters' office. He's the bureau chief in charge of counterterrorism. And I spoke with his detective several months ago, and I told him what Kimberly Shea did to me, and how nobody was killed in Newtown. And I asked, they said they would send somebody out to talk to her. I don't know what the results of that were. Nobody ever told me. But I did get a call later on that night from Brooklyn. I was born in Brooklyn, it was Kimberly's boss. He called me, and it must have been about 10:30. I think it was about 10:30 New York time. It was 7:30 here in Portland. And I just told him, she's a piece of garbage because of what she did. No one was killed in Newtown, and she contacted the Portland police, or had one of her agents working for her contact the police, say that I was mentally ill, which is something the Portland police have been doing for a while with me, claiming I was mentally ill. I ended up being abused when I was in jail by Deputy Rodney Schaefer, Lieutenant Penna, and a third deputy who I can't remember his name, but if they had a police lineup, I could pick them out. And none of these people apologize for all this abuse. And they expect me to appear in court on January 15th because of this frivolous complaint of this attorney, Joel Corcoran, who works for Senator Merkley. He's being paid federal tax dollars to perform tasks, perform a job, to work for the citizens of Oregon that need help, like myself, with federal agencies. He did nothing for me, never communicated with me at all, had his boss yell at me, and files this complaint of a stalking protective order. I don't know where the guy lives. I've never even been out to his house. I don't want to know where he lives. There's a video online of him on stage talking about him and his gay lover, who is much younger than him. I'll include the link if you guys want to watch it. It's just nasty. These people are dirty, horrible people, like I said, that I got that phone call today that told me that if the Multnomah County Sheriff tried to arrest me and come up to my residence, they're going to be taken out. So I'm at almost 25 minutes. That's my rant for tonight.